everybody. Hope everyone's doing great. We're here to talk about Dark Hero, which is a follow-up event. It's part of the main story. Like, some events are just like random bullshit, but this is it's part of the main story because it deals with stuff that's important for us to know, or kind of builds on the lore that we gain in some insight from in the main story. And it's a direct sequel to Boom Day, right? And Boom Day and this both take place, officially I figured it out, or finally, before when Eleg first shows up in episode 28 or chapter 28, right? So this is all kind of predating all that. And so we start off and we find out that we start with Maiden, right? We know a little about Maiden from their event, and the story with them and stuff, and how she's kind of popped up in her bond story and stuff. And now she's just kind of a loner, and she's kind of sad and wants friends, but it's hard for her to get friends, and she's super horny for us, obviously. And so she's always suffered from this deep isolation, and part of it is due to the extrinsic squad. No one can know they exist, so it's just her and Guillotine. And her and Guillotine are they get along, but they get along as co-workers, not as friends. And so she's been able to kind of work on developing because she's a nerd, a friendship with Exia. And because she's been friends with Exia has introduced her to Eleg and Trony, right? So it's kind of that continuation of what some of the stuff we learned about Exia from her bond story and everything else, right? So these guys are tied together as the loser girls, right? The nerds who just play video games in their room and don't shower and stuff. And this is the first time she's ever felt like she truly belonged, just being with these guys. And despite this, she needs to do some stuff in this story. So the story is the Trony event, right? But it focuses on it expands Maiden a lot as well. Is why I'm bringing all this up. Anyway, so the event actually opens up in there's a desolate landscape, and this mass-produced Nikke is being saved by the retro horde by the legendary Black Arc Ranger. And then after the battle, the Ranger encourages the Nikke to find beauty in the world despite its horrors. However, this immersion, this is just obviously a movie that's being watched by Trony, and she's shaken out of the reality and her intense fangirl moment, right? So now we have Trony and Drake, who should probably hang out and discuss this, are both super fangirls of Black Arc Ranger. But she gets interrupted because Eleg shows up, followed by Exia and Maiden, right? Because they're all super best friends and super nerds. And so she gets super shameful, and then she does the whole thing where she covers herself in a blanket and writes her will and testament. At this juncture, we kind of roll up to kind of get her to wake up, but also because they're playing Final Quest Online, or Final Fantasy 14 essentially. And we need to get Trony up so she can play, but also we gotta play because they need a healer, because it's Exia's the tank, and then the rest of them are DPS, and they need a healer, so they need us. Anyway, so we talk about her embarrassment with everything. We're finally able to coax her out by using lines from the show, right? And then we learned some information that because they saved the Ark from a Boomsday, that from the power thing, and because of their converter stuff and all that stuff they're doing, there's been a lot of interviews, but Aleg's essentially took in all the interviews, even though Trony did most of the work with the converter and everything. And then we're talking about that and kind of getting caught up on that event when we notice that there's an event circled on the calendar, and we're hey, what's this about? And she's oh, I don't want to talk about it, but are you free that day? And we're yeah, should we be free that day? And she's yes. And we're okay, yeah, sure, we'll be free that day. And then we start raiding. So we raid, and it's chaotic. Maiden's moved to tears because Trony says thank you to her, and she's all fucked up and not having friends, and she's just so appreciative that someone cares about her and whatnot. And then at some point, Eleg installs Boom inside the game somehow, and that kind of fucks stuff up, and we're not able to. There's an expansion. That's the whole point of this new raids and stuff. But we're not able to get through all the raids, and so everyone's all right, we need a break, and we're all right, cool, I'm gonna go to bed. Why are you going to bed? It's I thought we needed a break, and they're yeah, so we can play their games, and so then they play Iron Punch is one of them, which I think it's a fighting game maybe. And then it's hilarity ensues because Maiden keeps losing and losing and losing and losing, and she's no, I gotta keep playing, and it's hours go by, and she's refuses to quit and everything. But then eventually she gets a call from Ingrid, and it's oh, I gotta go work, sorry guys. And so she heads out. So then everyone kind of heads out on their own way. And now that Trony is left alone again, she listens to the interview about Eleg, where she's covering up the truth about the Ark's dark, the fact that the Ark's powered by a giant rapture core, right? That's what she's hiding from everybody. And she doesn't talk about that. She just talks about all this stuff. And then, there's there's some praise of Eleg and Trony being the silent heroes of the Ark, which activates some flashbacks to like some of the stuff from Trony's past that we saw before. At some point, Alig arrives and senses that Trony is like all burnt out, and then gifts her 2 tickets to the Black Ark Ranger movie, the new one that's coming out. And she encourages Trony to take us, right, so that we can fuck afterwards, and that'll give her some R&R and it'll help her friend recover from the stress of all like the secret research and kind of like hiding and just like being around people and whatnot. So while Trony prepares for the date, Alig uncovers a horrifying report. The Ark's power source is very similar, right? So they've seen this terrible thing, and then there's like this report that she finds, and it talks about material age obviously being Indivilia, and that the core, it's like the similarities, right? So they've seen this, and it's like this horrible, horrifying thing, but neither of them have been to like the surface. But so now with this information, it's like, wait, is that a Rapture core? Because it's like the same core that material H is, which is like the core of Indivilia. And that, the core can absorb energy from the Nikkes, just like material H and all this stuff. And at some point she gets interrupted by Ether, who's, whenever she shows up, it's a good time. It delivers some threats about the sensitivity of her research, about what she found, and about everything that's going on. And then while that's happening, Maiden and Guillotine from Intrinsic receive orders from the central government to arrest Alig and Trony on the suspicion of terrorism. And then Maiden's like, I really don't want to do that, but, she has a job and she has to do it. Elsewhere, we are taking Trony to our movie date, and so that's the day she circled on my calendar is the anniversary of when she first met Alig, right? So it's like a super good date for her because it's like Alig's like her only friend originally, but now she's got Exia and Maiden and us as well, right? And that she really gets concerned because she wants to buy a gift for Alig to commemorate their friendship and all this stuff, but because of social anxiety and just like being like a loser girl, she has like no idea what to even get. Plus, then we're like, well, what about Boom? And she's like, yeah, but she owns like everything related to Boom that like possibly exists, which gets immediately like confirmed as we go to like a store where they sell like Boom merchandise, and it's like everything's been bought. Like, it sells like nerd merchandise, right? It's like a Game Spot or Game, whatever it's fucking called, GameStop, and the whole section of like Boom stuff is sold out because Alig came over and bought it all, right? And so we end up getting her like a commemorative like PlayStation or Xbox controller. It looks like an Xbox controller that's like Boom related, and then like Alig or like Trony makes it so it can like turn lights on and off, and I think she also puts Boom on there as well, like on the controller. And at that point we head to the theater and watch the Dark Hero film, which yay, and then Trony's like super excited about it. She loves this. And then there's like a mysterious figure hiding out behind us. And who's this mysterious figure? It is revealed to be the real Black Ark Ranger. What? So she is like, oh, you're Trony. You're the one who does all this stuff. You're like a true hero and all this stuff. And then she takes us on like a patrol with her, demonstrating the heroism of like small acts of kindness and staying true to one's code of justice and yada, yada, yada. Trony gets super inspired, and she's going to go back and finish making like this custom Boom themed gamepad for Alig with all the added bullshit that she wants to add to it. And then meanwhile, Alig like never shows back up from like her research that she was doing before. And that is because, Maiden picked her up. So we get some conflict with Maiden, just trying to be like, I don't want to do this to my friends, and I have to order. And so she goes and uses the Kododama on Alig to freeze her and take her into custody. And then she's like really sad about the whole thing, and obviously she's like betraying her friends is how she feels about it. As Trony continued to wait for Alig, Ether arrives and has, she essentially tells her that like, hey, you guys are Alig got arrested as a terrorist and they suspect you too, and there's like 2 options that you have. The first option is to betray Alig and live your life, and her memory will get erased and she'll probably face disposal, which means being destroyed, obviously. But also you can just be rebelling. You can be a rebel and you can go rescue her. And if you really want, here's the coordinates for the detention facility. Meanwhile, Exia and I realize that something is wrong because we haven't heard from anybody and it's like raid time or whatever. And so we Hexia stays because she's going to watch and do hacking stuff. But we head over to the dorm where Alig and Trony are and realize something's wrong because no one's there. And then Ether shows up, which, is always a good time. And she hands us the same note. She's like, oh, I happened to make 2 of these just in case. You never knew what was going to happen, which is the coordinates where Alig's being held as well. And so we work to go rescue we work to go meet up with Trony to help rescue Alig with Exia as our operator, as she's done in the past. So at the facility, we find Trony hiding in a cardboard box, just like Metal Gear, right? Because at some point, we're like, how are we going to break into this like prison facility or whatever? And then Exia's like, why don't you just climb in a cardboard box? And like, why the fuck would we do that? And she's like, that's the only way to that's how you sneak into high-tech facilities. And we're like, okay. So we find like a box and we pick it up and Trony's inside. And it's like, holy shit. Anyway, X is able to like hack all the androids and gates and whatever. And then she shows us like the boom gamepad that she's like set up, and again it lets her like cut the lights in the facility and do all this other stuff. And X is like, dope, that's dope as shit. And she's like, yeah, it's for Alec's birthday or like or meeting day or whatever. Meanwhile, Alec's just like laying in her cell being sad, and Maiden comes over and is trying to like apologize and all this stuff, and Alec keeps being like, I worked alone, blah blah blah. And then they're like, it's very awkward, like back and forth, and then Alec's like, I'm not mad at you, you're just doing your job, like we're still friends. And then Maiden feels even worse about the whole thing, and then they hear like an 8-bit sound which draws Maiden out, and Maiden comes out to block us from getting to Alec, right? So she's like, I have to do my job, something, and then she like takes off her mask, right, which is how she uses the Kodonoma. So it's like, Trony, you gotta leave. If you don't leave, I've gotta, I'm gonna have to freeze you too and take you to jail, and you don't want to do that. And then we're like, Trony, we got this. And Trony's like, no, I got this. And then she, because she was inspired by the Black Ark Ranger, she refuses to back down, and she declares that her being a hero of the Ark, means she doesn't abandon her friends and all this stuff. And then, just has like this really kind of epic speech. And because of the guilt and the epic speech and like friendship is magic and all that stuff, Maiden finally like stands down, allowing us to pass. Maiden then contacts Ingrid and reports that the mission's a failure, choosing her friends over her duty. Trony then reaches Alec's cell, overcoming her initial trauma with like, she keeps having these like blood red hallucinations or whatever. And it's like her past when like everyone freaked out and like killed themselves because they were trying to see the sky or whatever, and all that crazy nonsense from Boom Day when Alec had to like help her. So this is like a reverse, right? So now Trony's helping Alec and whatnot. And so they reunite and they're super happy about everything, and they're like, oh, we're best friends again forever and all this stuff. And then Ether appears, which is always a good time, and reveals that she is actually the supervisor of like the whole detention facility. It's like the fucking... And she reveals that she kind of had some scientific curiosity about like this whole situation, and that she's willing to like kind of scrub the records for Alec and Trony if they promise to never say anything about the power source of the Ark, and then if we take direct like command over them, and essentially we're responsible for anything they do. And so we agree to that, and then Ether will falsify the records, claiming that their memories were wiped, but then they can remain active and keep doing what they're doing. And then she actually encourages, because Ether, she encourages to keep unraveling the secrets of the Ark. And we're like, what the fuck are you doing? And she's like, I just like to know things. Fuck it. Anyway, and then so we jump ahead, and it's been some time, and this is like what directly leads into, again, I can't remember, chapter 26, when Alec first shows up to come out to the surface when we go to the crystal region and all that stuff. And so on the surface, Alec and Trony gaze at the real sky, finally witnessing the unfathomable beauty, right? It's the first time either of them have been outside the Ark. And then they think about the Black Ark Ranger and the things that she said about how beautiful it is outside and the beautiful world and all that stuff. And so to maintain their cover that they kind of both got mind wiped, they agree to separate for a little bit. So instead of both of them going, and this is kind of what Alec like hinted at when she was like, oh, it's just me because of reasons. And so to maintain their cover, they agree to work separately. So Alec comes and joins the counters for our, expedition to find alternative power sources because of like the shit going on at the Ark. And then Trony's going to remain at the Ark and like monitor this system. And as Trony watches her friends leave, she finally feels like, okay, I can do this. I'm a hero. I don't need to retreat, and I never have to surrender. Which wraps up Dark Hero and leads into Trony's Bond story. All right, so now let's cover Alec's Bond story. So Trony, who, is part member of Electroshock, she's working hard into the night because she's trying to cover down for Alec. Alec had a failed attempt to play, I think it's called Combat Ace. And so she's like all tuckered out and stuff because she exerted a lot of energy with that. And Trony, and then Alec is like, I'm tired, I got to do this other work, and then I got to go meet with like MMR to kind of help them with like stuff or do like a report or whatever. And so Trony feels really guilty because Alec takes the burden of like being the front-facing member of Electric Shock. And so she's, doing a favor for her at this point, trying to help out and trying to feel like she's pulling her weight or whatever. And then she even offers to go meet with Sayun instead to give Alec a break from that. But Alec is like, no, don't worry about it. I know you're like antisocial, and so you just want to like chill and do this other stuff. So you should just do that and don't worry about your social anxieties. And then Trony's like, well, I need to get better. I need to be able to interact with other people, and I need to like improve myself. So then she gets like social connections for dummies or something so that she can work on relationships and whatnot. So once she finishes up that book, she reaches out to us to help her practice, right? And so we take her to the armory for a practice partner, and we introduce her to Yunhwa, another, who has the best social interaction relationships, whatever. Because we feel like if she wants to get practice, she needs to like push herself. Because if we give her to Emma, Emma's going to like take over and be super friendly and make it easy. But Yunhwa is going to be a lot more hard, and it ends up being too hard, and the whole thing ends up being a total disaster because Yunhwa is too blunt. And this kind of pushes Trony into having like a panic attack or something along those lines. And then we're like, okay, that was a really bad choice. We shouldn't have started like at level 5. We should have started at level 1. And so we take Trony and lead her away. Over at the cafe, Trony is sulking. And then Tia and Naga show up. Ah, blessed Naga, the best. So Trony attempts to use her social theory that she's studied to talk to them, but it becomes awkward when she begins transcribing their conversation and then oversharing a lot about like technical details because they're trying to watch like a puppy video, and Tia and Naga are just like gyrus, right? So they're just like for sure, like puppies are the cutest. And Trony's like, oh yeah, you see this video? It's got the blah 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 blah, and then Tia and Naga are just like, I don't know what to do here. So it doesn't work out exactly as we planned, but Trony's pretty happy because she was able to interact with them on some level and talk to them. And then we come to realize that we're kind of like trying to push her to be something that she's not, that we need to allow her to be herself, and that'll help her more than trying to be like a social butterfly, to be on like the level of Tia and Naga, for example. And so we kind of like wrap up the conversation with Tia Naga and her so that we can move to like the next objective, because it's a Bond story and that's like the next episode. But that gives her a little break from all the social strain of trying to interact with Tia Naga. So we head out and then we bump into Laplace, who offers to help Trony practice by role-playing as a villainous teammate Drake, as her villainous teammate Drake. So they go through the social notes point by point, and at the end, Laplace intentionally deletes all of Trony's data. And then she explains that she did this because Trony was trying to brute force a relationship or a personality change when she needs to like just be herself, that she needs to be genuine. So she keeps taking these notes and trying to like change her like coding, if you will, to make her different, then it's going to be awkward and she's never going to feel comfortable in social relationships, that she needs to be genuine. And it's like, oh wow, Laplace had good advice. That's shocking. That Trony, Laplace mentions that Trony needs to act more like a hero and do all that good stuff. So Laplace continues to help us out, and Trony realizes that trying to force herself to be like Elig or try to be a social butterfly for Elig's sake is actually going to make Elig worry more and be worse off at the end of the day. So we encourage her to support her squad by being herself and being authentic to herself and all that good stuff. So Trony finally embraces this, and she stops trying to change her personality and instead focuses on her technical strengths, because that's what she's the best at. She's the best in like the whole world at doing all this technical shit. And so, a few days go by, and she confidently takes all the lab reports away from Elig's workload and starts working on everything, right? And this eases up Elig so that she can do more of the social stuff and be successful at that, which Elig appreciates. And Trony is super happy that she's accepting who she is, and the fact that she just, even if, she doesn't have to be scared of social interactions, but she can also just be her true self, and she doesn't need to worry so much about trying to be different. And because as doing that, as being true to herself, she's going to be able to lighten Elig's load and be the most benefit to the squad and make them the most successful. And that wraps up the Bond story. So that was a cute little fun thing. Okay, so go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and we'll catch you guys later. Bye.